In the hidden corridors of the multiverse, few names inspire the dread and awe that Onslaught carries. He was not born but forged, a psychic juggernaut in his own right, a fusion of Professor Charles Xavier's boundless telepathic might and Magneto's indomitable will. Born of rage, doubt, and repressed fury, Onslaught was more than a being. He was a storm given form, an entity whose very existence challenged the balance of creation. His emergence was a fracture in destiny, a reminder that sometimes the noblest ideals can birth the most terrifying monsters. When Onslaught first came into being, he shook the foundations of the X-Men and the entire Marvel universe. Heroes fell, alliances shattered. His psychic scream tore into the minds of mortals and gods alike, spreading despair and domination. Yet, even when the greatest heroes united to cast him down, fragments of his essence lingered. Like a shadow that refuses to die, Onslaught waited, hidden, patient, observing the world grow more fragile with every conflict, more fractured with every act of hubris committed by heroes and villains alike. Far from the psychic storms of Onslaught's rebirth, another being walked the earth, a titan whose very name was synonymous with unstoppable force, Cain Marko, the Juggernaut. Unlike Onslaught, Juggernaut was not a creature of the mind. His power was raw, physical, and unrelenting. Blessed, or cursed, by the crimson gem of Cyttorak, Cain had become more than human. His footsteps cracked mountains, his fists shattered steel, and when he charged, no force in existence could halt his advance. For decades, he bore the weight of both respect and fear, a man whose destructive nature often made him an enemy, yet whose sheer resilience made him a legend. But Juggernaut's story was not simply that of a villain. Beneath the helmet and the rage lived a man, Cain, torn by bitterness toward his stepbrother, Charles Xavier. Jealousy had driven him once, vengeance had fueled him often, but in his heart he wrestled with a truth. Was he forever destined to be a pawn of Cyttorak, or could he carve his own path? That struggle made him unpredictable, and unpredictability is something Onslaught could neither tolerate nor ignore. It was during the quiet years after Onslaught's apparent defeat that the psychic entity began to reassemble himself. Drawn back together by scraps of lingering psionic energy, resentment, and the ever-present chaos of human conflict, Onslaught slowly reconstructed his essence. He studied the world that had once tried to destroy him and realized that brute power alone would not suffice for his return. He needed to conquer not just the body, but also the symbols of resistance that defied inevitability. And no symbol was greater than the Juggernaut, the living embodiment of unstoppable defiance. For Onslaught, Juggernaut was more than a rival. He was a paradox. Juggernaut was unmovable, indestructible, a force tied to mystical power beyond even the reach of psychic manipulation. If Onslaught could bend or break Juggernaut, it would prove his dominion was absolute. No fortress would stand, no mind would resist, no power would remain untouchable. And so the stage was set. Juggernaut, weary of his endless battles and searching for purpose, found himself wandering far from the chaos of cities, seeking solitude. He had begun to question Cyttorak's hold on him, to wonder if there was a destiny beyond being a weapon. But peace was a fleeting illusion for men like Cain Marko. Dark whispers crept into his mind, alien yet familiar, promising power, dominance, and release from his eternal servitude. He resisted, slamming his helmet tighter against his skull, for he knew the signature of such psychic intrusion. Onslaught had found him. Juggernaut roared into the night, his fury shaking the ground beneath his feet. He would not be controlled. He would not be a pawn. But even as he defied the whispers, the shadows lengthened around him, and the air grew heavy with an unseen presence. A storm of psychic energy crackled, bending reality itself, and from it emerged Onslaught, not as a distant phantom, but as a towering figure of armored might, his form glowing with the terrible fusion of Xavier's mind and Magneto's will. The ground quaked at his arrival. The sky itself dimmed, as though recoiling from the nightmare reborn. Onslaught's voice echoed like thunder within Kane's skull. Juggernaut, the unstoppable force, you have defied gods, shattered armies, and carried the weight of Cyttorak's power. But now you will kneel, or you will break. Kane clenched his fists, his massive frame trembling not with fear, but with anticipation. At last, a worthy fight had come. He spat into the dirt, glaring up at the towering figure before him. You think you can break me, Onslaught? I don't stop. I never stop. And if it's a fight you want, you've just run headfirst into the one man who can give it to you. But Juggernaut stood his ground. His boots dug trenches into the soil, his massive frame radiating raw power. His helmet gleamed under the distorted light, a bulwark against Onslaught's telepathy. Kane Marco, the unstoppable Juggernaut, did not flinch. He did not waver. You don't scare me, Onslaught, he growled, his voice like an earthquake breaking through stone. I've been through gods, demons, and entire teams of capes who thought they could slow me down. You're just another body I'm going to run through. Onslaught's response came not in words, but in a surge of power. His armored hand extended, and a wave of psionic energy detonated outward. The very ground screamed as it was ripped apart. Trees disintegrated into ash, and the air burned with psychic fire. But Juggernaut lowered his head and charged, roaring as the force slammed into him. The impact was thunderous. Mountains could have split under the strain, yet Juggernaut pressed on. His body cut through the psionic storm like a warship through crashing waves. Every step forward shattered the ground beneath him, every heartbeat echoing like war drums. Then, collision. Juggernaut's massive bulk slammed into Onslaught, the unstoppable force meeting the immovable psionic wall. The explosion of energy sent shockwaves rippling for miles. Entire forests bent and broke, the earth splitting open with seismic fury. Kane staggered but did not fall. Onslaught slid back, his form flickering as the raw impact strained his psionic armor. The entity's glowing eyes narrowed. Impressive, Onslaught intoned, his voice reverberating in Kane's skull. But you are still a pawn. You run, you smash, you obey the will of Cyttorak. I will show you what it means to be free of such shackles. With a flick of his hand, Onslaught wove psychic tendrils around Juggernaut, chains of thought and force designed to bind his movements. They wrapped around Kane's arms and legs, searing against his flesh like molten steel. Juggernaut strained, roaring defiantly, every muscle bulging against the intangible grip. Nothing holds me, he bellowed, slamming his fists together. The shockwave shattered the psychic bindings, fragments of psionic energy bursting like shards of glass. Juggernaut lunged forward, grabbing Onslaught's armored chestplate with both hands and driving him into the ground with a thunderous slam. The earth cratered beneath the impact, dust and debris erupting skyward. Onslaught lay pinned for only a moment before erupting with energy. A surge of magnetic force repelled Juggernaut backward, hurling the unstoppable titan through boulders and trees. Kane hit the ground with earth-splitting force, yet rose again, wiping blood from his lip with a grin. You hit hard, Juggernaut spat, but I don't break, and I don't stop. Onslaught's form rose slowly, like a nightmare pulling itself out of the shadows. His voice cut across reality like a blade. Then I shall unmake you. The battlefield erupted once more. Onslaught unleashed a storm of telekinetic force, ripping massive slabs of earth from the ground and hurling them like meteors. Juggernaut tore through them, his fists smashing stone to dust, his momentum unrelenting. Each charge brought him closer, each strike a promise of destruction. Their fists collided again and again and again. Each clash was a detonation, each blow carrying the weight of worlds. Juggernaut's strength was absolute, the raw, unending power of Cyttorak incarnate. Onslaught's might was limitless in its own right, fueled by the combined psionic essence of Xavier and Magneto, enhanced by rage and control. The clash raged on for what felt like eternity. Mountains shook, rivers reversed. The air itself seemed ready to tear apart from the sheer pressure of their struggle. And though Juggernaut fought with unmatched fury, Onslaught's versatility was overwhelming. He turned Kane's strength against him, bending gravity, distorting space, and flooding the battlefield with psychic storms. At last, with a surge of power, Onslaught unleashed a psychic scream that reverberated across dimensions. The ground quaked, the sky split with crimson lightning, and Juggernaut staggered under the psychic onslaught. Blood poured from his ears, his vision blurred, yet still, he did not fall. Roaring with primal fury, Kane Marco charged one last time. His body burned with pain, his armor cracked, but his spirit blazed with defiance. He slammed into Onslaught with every ounce of force he possessed. The explosion was apocalyptic. Reality shuddered. A crater miles wide tore into the earth, dust rising in a storm that blotted out the sky. When the dust settled, Juggernaut stood in the center, his chest heaving, his fists clenched. Onslaught's form flickered, broken, yet still standing. Neither had fallen, neither had yielded, but the message was clear. Juggernaut was not a pawn to be broken, nor a force to be bent. He was the unstoppable,